Lala Kent doesn't do subtle. She never has. And honestly, that's exactly why this situation on the Valley is hitting differently than your standard cast disagreement. Because when Lala decides something needs to be said, she doesn't wait for the right moment or soften the edges. She just says it. And right now, what she's saying is landing in the middle of a friendship that was already holding more weight than it probably should have been. Here's what's actually happening beneath the surface of this argument, because it's about more than just one heated conversation. During the group trip, Danny Bucco got loud. Not playful loud, not the kind of spirited disagreement that reads as passion in the edit. He was yelling at Nia. Directed, heated, the kind of energy that makes a room go quiet even when nobody says anything out loud. And Lala noticed. She clocked it immediately. And then, because she is fundamentally incapable of watching that kind of dynamic unfold without doing something about it, she said something. She called Danny out. Whether you love Lala or find her exhausting, you have to acknowledge that this was not a move she made for attention. She wasn't performing outrage. There's a specific kind of anger that comes from personal history, from having been in rooms where nobody said anything, from having internalized the silence of people around you when you needed someone to speak up. Lala carries that. It's not hidden. She's talked about it openly across multiple seasons and in spaces outside the show. So when she watched Danny direct that energy at Nia, something in her didn't calculate the social cost. It just reacted. And Nia's reaction to that is where things get genuinely complicated. Because Nia shut it down. Not Danny, the person who stepped in on her behalf. And that's the moment that's creating the fault line here, not just for the cast but for viewers watching from home who are starting to ask a much harder question about what they're actually seeing. When the argument between them spills into the trailer, and it does, fully and without much ambiguity, there's this moment where Danny tries to step in and say something. And Nia stops him, physically blocks him, tells Lala directly, "Don't talk to him, she's talking to me." And on the surface, that reads as a woman asserting control over her own situation, standing her ground, refusing to be argued about rather than argued with. But Lala called out exactly what that moment actually looked like from the outside. She said Nia didn't want Danny talking because she was afraid of what he might say. Sit with that for a second. Because if Nia was simply protective of her marriage, defending her husband from an unfair attack, standing up for someone she loves, she would want him to speak. She'd want him to explain himself, to push back, to show the group that the characterization of him was wrong. That's what you do when you believe in someone's innocence. You let them make their own case. But Nia blocked him. And what Lala was pointing at, whether she intended it this precisely or not, is the psychology of someone who has learned, consciously or not, that the safest version of the person they love is the silent version. The one who isn't currently saying anything that can be challenged, contradicted, or used as further evidence of a problem that hasn't been fully acknowledged. This is a dynamic that's been brewing on the Valley for a while now. The concern about Danny's drinking isn't something being manufactured by producers or amplified by editing. The cast has watched it, talked about it quietly, and that quiet, that collective hesitation to actually confront it, is its own kind of telling. When an entire group of people who are not exactly known for holding their tongues all seem to be dancing around the same subject, the subject tends to be real. Lala is not dancing. That's either the bravest thing happening on this show right now, or it's going to cost her a friendship. Possibly both. And Nia, here's where the empathy has to come in, even when the frustration is loud. Nia isn't a villain in this story. The way she's moving through this feels less like someone in denial and more like someone who has built an entire emotional architecture around keeping things stable. Around protecting something she loves fiercely, even when the thing she's protecting is behaving in ways that are causing damage around it. That's not stupidity. That's not weakness. It's an incredibly human response to an incredibly painful position. But there's a difference between protecting your partner and silencing the people who are worried about you both. What makes this argument so loaded is that it's not really about who said what on a trip. It's about loyalty and what loyalty actually requires. Because Nia experiences Lala's calling out as a betrayal. As a friend deciding to make her husband a target in front of cameras and cast members and an audience. The humiliation of that, Having someone publicly name a problem you haven't fully let yourself look at yet, that's not nothing. That kind of exposure can feel like an attack even when the intent was something else entirely. And fans online are watching this with a particular kind of intensity because many of them have been in one version or another of this exact situation. Either you're the one who said something when you probably should have stayed quiet, or you're the one who knows someone is right but cannot bring yourself to agree out loud because agreeing feels like the first step toward everything falling apart. The viewers who are loudly backing Lala right now, and there are a lot of them, aren't just reacting to the drama. They're reacting to the relief of watching someone finally name what the whole room had already been feeling. Reality TV does this occasionally. It creates these pressure release moments where something gets said that cuts through the performed version of events and lands somewhere honest. This feels like one of those moments. But there's a version of this that could go very wrong for Lala too. Because Nia is not someone who absorbs conflict quietly and then lets it dissolve. She's protective in a way that's deeply personal, almost territorial. And when she feels like the people around her have decided they know better than she does about her own marriage, her own relationship, her own life, that's not a feeling she tends to process gently. The argument in the trailer isn't a preview of something that ends cleanly. The energy between them suggests that both women came into that conversation already wounded. Lala from watching something she found unconscionable and nobody else moving. Nia from feeling like her husband, and by extension her choices, were being put on display and judged. Neither of those feelings is wrong. Both of them are real, and they're pulling in completely opposite directions. What Season 3 of The Valley seems to be building toward, if this situation is any indication, is a reckoning about what it actually means to be someone's friend when you don't approve of what's happening in their life. The Valley has always had an edge to it that the more polished Bravo shows sometimes sand down. These are people whose lives are genuinely intertwined in ways that make the fallout from moments like this messier and more lasting than a reunion argument that ends with a toast. Whatever happens between Lala and Nia from here, the question sitting underneath all of it isn't going away. At what point does protecting someone you love become something that's actually hurting them? And who gets to decide when that line has been crossed? Lala has an answer. Nia has a different one. And the space between those two answers is exactly where this season is going to live. What do you think is actually going on here? Is Lala overstepping, or is she the only one willing to say what everyone else is thinking? Drop your perspective in the comments because this one genuinely has people divided, and I want to know which side of it you're landing on.